Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Represent NYC. I'm Assembly Member Glick, and I represent the 66th Assembly District. This encompasses the Village East and West, Soho, Tribeca, and Battery Park City North neighborhoods. Today we will have a conversation on crisis pregnancy centers across the state of New York and their impact on women, particularly immigrant and minority communities, and their access to comprehensive reproductive health care. Since the 1970s, women have been engaged in a constant battle to ensure their right to control their own health and reproduction. Given the historic struggle connected to providing adequate and time-sensitive health care needs for women of various backgrounds and socioeconomic statuses, we are increasingly seeing a woman's right to choose being denied through new mechanisms, including the rapid spread of crisis pregnancy centers, or as we like to say, fake clinics, which operate under the guise of a facility that offers health services like free pregnancy tests, but they don't say that they do not provide abortions. Joining us today to discuss this topic are two leaders at the forefront of the movement to protect a woman's right to choose. Elizabeth Estrada, the New York Field and Advocacy Manager for the National Latino Institute for Reproductive Health. She is an advocate for direct service and education dissemination on reproductive health, rights, and justice to safeguard the rights and freedoms for women, children, and families across New York State. Aviva Zadoff is the Director of Advocacy and Volunteer Engagement for the National Council of Jewish Women New York. Her work leads her to frequent encounters with women in need of information to combat deceptive practices in these limited pregnancy-related clinics whose sole mission is to deter women from terminating pregnancies. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate so much you being here, considering your busy schedules and all the work you're doing. But Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about what kind of work you are doing in New York.
Well, as you mentioned, these clinics target immigrant communities, and the National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health, that's one of our constituents. And what we have noticed, our office is in the Bronx. My New York Latina Advocacy Network is in the Bronx, right around the corner from a crisis pregnancy center or fake clinic, which is how we talk about the issue in our community. We've noticed that people are seeking us for how to get, services. Where should we go? And so we often find ourselves being the liaison of information for the community, whether it's where to get an immigration lawyer, or where to get an abortion, or where to get a screening so that they can, start the planning of a healthy pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes. So through those conversations, we were noticing that our activist base had experienced the fake clinic around the corner. And so we started having conversations with more activists saying that they grew up in the community with that fake clinic situated right across the street from a Planned Parenthood, that they accidentally went in there attempting to access health care at a legitimate clinic, but were deterred and basically just made to feel ashamed about their wanting to exercise self-determination and bodily autonomy. And so, and then Aviva asked us to join the Pro-Truth New York Coalition, and we've been using that platform and the resources to educate the community, to help people understand what a fake clinic is, because often when you first say that, they're like, what does that even mean? And so a lot of the work that we do in the Bronx is about education. It's about lifting the stigma around shame, so it's a lot of culture shifting. And the education leads us to leadership development. We have folks that want to tell others and inform others and educate their families and their own kids and their communities, because we believe the women in the Bronx deserve the truth.
Aviva, tell us a little bit about how the National Council of Jewish Women New York got involved in this.
Sure. So the National Council of Jewish Women New York is a 125-year-old organization that has been on the front lines of progressive issues, particularly those that are affecting the lives of women, children, and families. And we found that so many people who consider themselves knowledgeable on the issues around reproductive health and access didn't know about fake clinics or crisis pregnancy centers. They had never heard about what they are or how they operate. And particularly here in New York, those who even did know that CPCs exist didn't realize that they were here in New York. They thought it was an issue in the South, in the Midwest, where access to abortion services are more limited. But the truth is that they're here in New York City and all over the state, just the way they are all over the country and the world. So we really felt like it was important to make sure that people knew what these places were, what they look like, how they are attracting people into their clinics, and the deceptive nature of these fake clinics, and that they're here in New York, and what to look out for if somebody is looking for reproductive health services, abortion services. They need to know what to look out for when they go into a clinic.
Do you find that the clinics are also working on the basis of appealing to individual women's religious backgrounds?
I mean, I would say so. Oftentimes, once I went to the EMC Clinic in our neighborhood, and they had rosaries and crosses in the offices. Didn't have any signage, though, that they didn't actually have medical staff in the building, but they certainly do promote. And even if you go to this anti-choice organization's website, they promote religion and believe that they are doing this in the name of God.
So tell us how someone walking down the street looking for services, or are they looking them up? Are they in the phone book or on a Google search?
They find them all of those ways. One of the most dangerous aspects of these places is if you do Google, for instance, pregnancy help in my area, or pregnancy help in New York City, oftentimes what comes up is a fake clinic as one of the first couple of hits on the page. So people are certainly finding them online. They do not, advertise that they're a fake clinic. They will look and sound like a legitimate, provider. They won't specify necessarily what services they do or don't offer. They will just try to get somebody to come into the clinic. But they also are on the streets. They have people out on the streets in front of their clinics, in front of real abortion clinics, trying to get people to come into their fake clinic. They will do something called co-locating, which is, like Elizabeth mentioned, in the Bronx, having a clinic right next to a Planned Parenthood or an abortion provider, sometimes even in the same building, as in the case in the Brooklyn Planned Parenthood Center. There's a CPC 2 floors away from the actual clinic. So they will name themselves things like Choices, or something that sounds like they would be a legitimate clinic, all in the name of trying to get people to come in, bringing people into their clinic, into getting their services, so that they can then, try to counsel them out of making the choice to have an abortion.
So since you've been in one, Elizabeth, tell the viewers, you walk in as one might walk into and have an expectation that there's a reception desk, or where you check in at in a doctor's office or in a regular clinic. Are they set up that way?
No, it doesn't look, when I went with a colleague of mine, it didn't look like that at all. It looked more like maybe what perhaps a therapist's office might look like. The front reception was not, it just didn't look medical, to be very completely direct. And a lot of the deceptive tactics, or one of them, is that they'll advertise with pictures of pregnant people in the windows and say that they offer free screenings and free tests, which is attractive to a target of their deception, which is low-income people or people who don't speak English as a first language. I say always in my education that if you see pregnant people in the windows as an advertisement, that is a dead giveaway. that it is not a legitimate clinic, because we know in the reproductive health rights and justice movement that abortion clinics or providers face violence, and they would never openly advertise in the windows to try to attract attention. They're far more discreet, which is makes it easier for crisis pregnancy centers or fake clinics to attract folks.
I have two bills, which I don't want to forget to let the viewers know about. One would actually require these centers to, on the first contact with a client, make it clear that they do not provide actual medical health services or abortions. That would have to be a disclosure. We're going to make a very strong push. We were focused in the past session on the Reproductive Health Act, which fortunately finally passed into law. So that's a good thing. But I also have a bill that would require the Department of Health to do a study and identify where they are. And as you pointed out, they frequently co-locate. So how close are they to legitimate medical facilities, and what kind of funding are they receiving? Are they receiving any public funding? So that is going to be a focus, which is perhaps one of the reasons I asked you to be here today, because I think people don't know. And even people who are very educated and have followed issues around reproductive rights for years are not aware that these clinics are operating in their own hometown and creating a tremendous amount of deception and distraction, so that young women or immigrant women are delayed in seeking services. And all we know is the sooner you address whatever your health care need is, the better off you are. So, Aviva, how is the pro-truth movement, how are you getting the word out? What are you using as tools of information?
Sure. So we launched the Pro-Truth campaign in June of 2018 as a coalition with lots of partner organizations who work in the reproductive rights, justice, health field, as a way to bring this issue to the forefront and to shine a light on it. And one of the things we did was create a website which has a ton of information and materials about what a crisis pregnancy center is, how do I look out for one, what are my rights as a consumer or patient. Additionally, we created a map of the whole New York State that plots out each crisis pregnancy center that we've been able to identify, as well as every legitimate abortion clinic throughout the state that people can look at, see where these places are, find services that they're looking for. And we work with great partners like Elizabeth and the New York Latina Advocacy Network and many others to take these information materials that we have created and try to get them as widely disseminated as possible. So we have a brochure that we created that we call the 5 Ways Not to Get Played, which is really just a way to lay out, here are the things to look for when you're going into a clinic. So you can identify whether this is a place where you'll be able to receive legitimate medical services or whether this might be a fake clinic. So working with partners who are in neighborhoods that are affected by these crisis pregnancy centers that have grassroots advocacy has been one of the ways that we've really worked to get the word out and try to spread as much information about these places as possible.
And what is that website?
Sure, good point. It's protruthy.org. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of great downloadable materials that people can go and print out, use, and give to friends, talk about these issues with other people and have the information right at their fingertips.
Working in your community, Elizabeth, what are the means that you have employed to raise awareness, and are young women coming to you, or are you having to seek them out?
Well, I think Aviva did not do a really, she's playing down the resources, because I think that the Pro-Truth Coalition has been kind of like that platform that we have been able to use to disseminate the information in the community. That 5 ways to not get played is actually translated into Spanish, which is a huge resource, because it's getting to the community that is being targeted by these fake clinics. And it's a little bit of both. We seek people. In the beginning of the campaign, it was more of me coming into the community and seeing if this was an issue. I knew it was, but I wanted folks to be aware, whether it resonated, and it did right away. Not only did it resonate, but it made people mad when they didn't know about what these clinics did and how they targeted our communities. But the information, the 5 ways to not get played, has been really solid piece of education that we're able to host meetings, and from the beginning of the year to now has been a huge difference. Oftentimes in the beginning I was seeking people and like, will you let me talk about this issue? But now people want to host meetings and have their friends come over, and that's been our model. It's women's circles, where we go to people's homes, where we host at our own office, so that they can understand how close and how in their community these places have been. This particular clinic has been there for a really long time. And so that's how people have kind of resonated with the campaign. You get mad, you get the information, you get mad, and then you get active. And that's what we hope to continue to do, to open up this avenue of education, so that folks feel empowered to understand what they mean, how they can spot them, and then educate others. And that's been kind of the base of our participation in the coalition, is education and then leadership development. So they can be the conduit of information, because in the Latino community, oftentimes we don't necessarily have access to the internet. And so you'll ask a cousin or an uncle or an aunt, hey, where can I go and get health services? And that's kind of a tactic, because already folks perhaps are undocumented and feel like they might be targeted at a local community center or a local clinic, or perhaps there's stigma around Planned Parenthood. That you feel, oh, maybe I don't want to go there, I want to go. So let's go ask Elizabeth where she thinks she, is a good place to go. So through that relationship building, you build trust, and then you can talk about things that are stigmatized, like abortion, and then begin to kind of agitate a little bit around that, and kind of bring people into what serious problem this is.
Well, obviously, my hope is that in listening to this, our viewers are going to be informed, and then they're going to get mad, and we want them to know, there's so much that's happening today on every level, whether it's the environment or mass transit or whatever. People are pulled in a lot of different directions, but they are hungry to have an impact and to do something that they feel is helping others and making a difference in a world where, frankly, things seem totally off the rails if one watches the news, which probably isn't great for one's mental health these days. But we want to see, when people are viewing this and they get angry, what are the recommendations? Where can they connect? What can they do to make an impact locally or more broadly? Obviously, I have some legislation coming up, but there may be other things that people can do in their neighborhoods, in the organizations in which they're working, and certainly, hopefully, at some point, reaching out to people in government about this issue. So what are your suggestions, Aviva?
Absolutely. Well, I would definitely say check out protruthny.org for some of the resources to get a little bit better educated yourself, and then share it with people. As Elizabeth was saying, talking to other people who, this is an issue that might affect them, that is a huge way to, bring this to the light and to take away some of the deception that these clinics operate under. If people know the truth, if they're aware, if they are looking out for these places, we really believe that, so far, and we hope that, your bills pass very shortly, and so that might change. But so far, government hasn't really been able to regulate these places and protect people from fake clinics. And so we feel like we need to protect each other. We need to help each other get educated, to know the truth about what's out there. So find the resources on protruthny.org, share them, talk to people who might be interested, or, if you are a teacher, if you work in a school, if you work in a community center, think about bringing some of this information to the people in your community to talk and have a wider conversation about it. And definitely follow us on social media. We have a really great social media community that is talking about this. We are followed at I Am Pro Truth, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And also, if you're out in the community and you see what you think might be a fake clinic, let us know, because as I said, we have a map and we continue to update that, and these places often move, they change names, they try to do tricky things like that. So the more information we have, the better we're able to spread that and let other people know. So I think just really talking about it, engaging on this issue, and as Elizabeth said, not being afraid to bring it up, even though it might be a hard issue.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. You said that there's a stigma around Planned Parenthood. Do you think that's about people? Obviously, Planned Parenthood provides a wide range of services and a lot of primary care, whether individuals can afford it or not. So for me, it's a great organization, always has been. But I'd like to, are people afraid to go to Planned Parenthood because of what has been in the news? And do they think they only provide abortion services?
Well, I think that the anti-choice movement has done a good job of maligning Planned Parenthood. And the lies and deception go federally as they do locally. So I'm sure and everyone in this movement understands that anyone who blocks a person's access to reproductive care or bodily autonomy is just doing it for whatever ideals that are, anti-choice. So, and in our community, Black and Latino community, there's, we have all dealt with forced sterilizations. We deal with high number of maternal mortality in the Black community. And so these are also compounded by the lies and deception that anti-choicers have kind of spread around reproductive health services and specifically Planned Parenthood. So our community sometimes is, opts to learn more and is ready to learn more before they just go on what they've heard on the news or what they've heard from, and someone in their community. So there is some history there, but I think that what Aviva was saying is, and what even you were saying about people feeling a little despair in these times, what we're getting at is that we're building a community so that you don't feel alone, so that you feel protected, so that at the end of the day, we're taking care of each other through conversations and through the share of information and through having each other's back. So while, yes, there is this deception and these lies that people who do not believe in abortion, we're here to kind of comfort people and tell people the truth. Pro-Truth New York. I mean,
Aviva, I know that we have probably about only 3 or 4 minutes left. Are there, I know there are organizations in this coalition Are they largely groups that have already been working on issues around reproductive health, or is it a broader group of folks, and are there people who are viewing who might say, hey, my organization might want to be a part of that? Is that still a possibility?
Absolutely. We are always looking for new partners because the larger we create this network, the stronger we're going to be and the more voices we'll have. So if there are people out there who think that this might be relevant or interesting to their communities or to their organizations, we love to have a conversation and get you involved. You know, we have a coalition that is mostly made up right now of organizations that work in the reproductive rights, health, and justice world, as well as some that work in the sexual education world. But we are always looking to expand and grow.
Do you have, either of your organizations, do you have sort of a speakers bureau so that if somebody says, well, gee, you know, I don't feel comfortable learning all about this, but I have an organization or a political club where I'd love to have somebody come and speak to us and raise our awareness. Do you have something like that?
Well, I'm always available.
Yeah.
We like
We're
to go
usually
around.
the ones that show up.
Yes, we definitely have other partners as well who we reach out to who might be interested. Definitely, I would say to anyone who might be interested in this topic at all, definitely reach out. We will figure a way to connect and to you know, get more people involved.
So apparently I have the Speakers Bureau right here with me today. And I think that New Yorkers are anxious for an opportunity to do something positive. And I think that working to ensure that women are not misled, are not denied by virtue of being misled, that they want to do something for this. And, you know, I told you we'd go fast, and we've run out of time. And thank you again, Elizabeth and Aviva, for being here with us. And I hope that you'll be watching Represent NYC on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. And it's been a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.